Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
I'm Judith Selby, and I'm a watercolor artist, and I'm going to show you my process today. The first thing I do is take my 140 or 300 pound paper. This is 300 Kilimanjaro paper, and I give it a bath. My technique is it's a saturated technique, so that still isn't enough water, even though I gave it a bath. That just got me started so that it was plenty wet on both sides so that it lays flat and I get the flow for the water. Water has a static quality. See how it sits right on top of the paper and doesn't move? But if you lightly move it, there's different amounts of reflection. What I try to do to keep the spontaneity of my water and my pigment is that I allow a lot of water to be over the whole surface so that the pigment can move naturally. Watercolor is so intriguing to me because when you've got the finished picture, there's no sign of the water. It's totally absent, but yet you have the path and the movement of the water and the pigment. One day, I had been at our cabin in Canada, and I was getting on the boat to get back to the mainland, and the painting I had in my hand, the wind blew into the lake, and everyone around thought, oh, how sad, it's ruined. And I grabbed the piece back out of the water, put it on a piece of masonite, and carried it home that way, soaking wet, and it dried in the car naturally. And I noticed that when I got done, when the paper finally dried, I had another stage up of the iridescence. So I've incorporated that into my process. I want the water to soak in and but still be that reflective mirror stage. These are watercolor pigments. I'm activating the colors. I use the most transparent paint I can find. I start with the lightest values first. I like to move around the paper at this stage. Another part of my process that evolved was how I paint. Instead of sitting, I'm usually standing and moving. After a car accident many years ago, I thought I wouldn't be able to paint anymore. And I had to adapt a way to be able to continue that. And I couldn't stand or sit in one spot because of a neck injury. So I just started working around the table and kept on moving. And now I can stay in one spot, but at the time I couldn't. So I've just incorporated that in because that has created a kind of effect that I like in my paintings. I have no preconceived notion about what I'm going to make this into yet. I'm just applying the color very randomly. It's spontaneous and random. As the pigments flow together, I begin to look for shapes to help me determine where I'm going to go with this. I like color. So I pretty much just start with the primaries and let them begin to complement each other. See, the blues start going into the greens. I paint from the heart and soul, so it's like just whatever happens, happens. The tipping part is really important for getting the different colors. And there's a lot of movement. A lot of times I end up with a lot of blue background, but in this one I'm just thinking I'm in a yellow mood, so I want to do some more yellow. It's so fun to just watch it change as it mingles. The 300-pound paper holds so much water that it just gives me more opportunity with this stage. With the lighter paper, it doesn't stay at the mirror stage this long. There's a couple dry spots. I don't know if you can see those, but I'm going to leave those because that'll add some texture. I rely on happy accidents and back bleeds and all the things you're not supposed to have in watercolor. I rely on them to help giving me inspiration on where I want to go. I still don't have any plan on what I'm actually going to paint. Sometimes I add a little bit of collage, some kind of rice paper that I'll pull apart, and that should absorb the color. See how it's pulling the color in? And it'll make interesting shapes, and we'll see what we get. Still working on randomness. I'm actually starting to see some umbrella shapes, so I'm applying some of this to kind of bring out the umbrella shape. I probably will pull this paper off when it dries, but it'll leave texture and shapes, and then I can build my project from that. And it'll keep on changing. I'm thinking about, not so much about what I'm going to make this into, but what I want the colors to be doing and where I want them to go, so I get the different values and some different mixtures of color. Like I want the turquoise to blend with the blue here, and I want some purple to do some blending over here. Now I'm going to demonstrate lifting. I need it in the matte stage. I need a thirsty brush, so I squeeze out my brush. I'm looking for shapes that I want to enhance. This is the first that I'm actually pushing my brush into the paper. The rag in there's 100% rag in the paper, and the rag works with the color and the water to get the colors I want. What I'm looking for here is I just want to start building some contrast from lights to darks in a few of the shapes. The pigment and the water in the paper now has gotten to the point where I have to leave it alone overnight. My focus isn't on the finished project. It's the process that I enjoy so much. I paint from my heart, not from my mind, and I allow the spontaneity of the elements working together in a natural way to achieve where I'm going with the paintings.
If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org. If you have segment ideas pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund by the vote of the people on November 4th, 2008.